Hi there. Good morning. Thank you for joining me for our first ever Sarasota Deep Dive broadcast. I am Darcy Young. I work for an organization called the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, and our mission is to restore and protect Sarasota Bay. The purpose of these deep dive interviews is to bring on guests whose work has a positive impact on our bays and their watersheds. And we're lucky to have a lot of really talented and smart people working on bay restoration in Sarasota and Manatee counties. And we're excited to introduce you to some of them in this series. So my first guest this morning is Armando Ubeda, Florida Sea Grant Agent with IFAS Extension Sarasota County. Let's go ahead and get Armando added to this stream. Hey, Armando, how's it going?
How you doing, Darcy?
Good. So before we jump into our main topic, which is the Florida Horseshoe Crab Watch program, I want to give you a chance to just tell us a quick rundown of the other kind of programs that you work on as a Florida Sea Grant Agent for Sarasota County. Also, how you came to be a Sea Grant Agent. You know, what are your main interests in marine biology?
All right, great, thanks. So as a Florida Sea Grant Agent, I have different programs. My whole program actually is outreach and education. So I'm a faculty of UF based on Sarasota County. And my role, as I said, is to educate the community. So I have different programs with different stakeholders. Some of my programs are related to artificial reef. Some of the programs that I have are related to living shorelines, which promoting native plants and trying to bring back the natural ecosystems into our bay. I do programming related to marine debris, water quality and quantity a little bit. So a little bit of really of everything. But if I had to divide in three topics, it will be industries, marine fisheries, and education in general. And how I became to be in this position? Well, I've been living in Sarasota since 2005. I'm actually a marine biology who came to Sarasota to work, trying to work remote, to do shark research, which I did for a few years. And then I stayed in Sarasota after I left mode doing conservation work through Latin America and Central America, but always connected to Florida. And my passion is animal behavior. And you will see when I talked about horseshoe crabs, why I'm so passionate about understanding what animals do, what they do.
That's so cool, Armando. Yeah, I appreciate knowing a little bit more about your background, and I hope our viewers do too. I find it always helps me to know a little bit more about a presenter before they start going really deep, taking a deep dive into the topic. So, but today we're going to focus on just one of those programs, which you mentioned. It's called Florida Horseshoe Crab Watch. And I want to try to share an image of what this looks like. So our viewers can see what the tagging program for Florida Horseshoe Crab Watch looks like. I don't think it's showing you that image, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So Armando, I'm going to rely on you to describe what the tagging program looks like and how it works.
All right. So for those who don't know, the horseshoe crabs, we have horseshoe crabs in Florida. So we're very fortunate. These are marine invertebrate. It's very prehistoric, goes way back. And we don't know much about the populations in Florida, how they're doing. So one of the reasons we established this program, this is a partnership, I should say, Florida Sea Grant, University of Florida, and FWC, Fishery and Wildlife Conservation Commission. So in our county, as through the state, we're trying to, as I said, understand how the population of horseshoe crabs is doing. And so the program is a citizen science program, basically because FWC doesn't have all the resources to monitor each county in the state. So that's why Florida Sea Grant has educated, again, in partnership with FWC, citizen scientists, so they can actually monitor population of horseshoe crabs in their county or whatever they want to do it.
Wow, so you actually have just regular community members who are going out and helping do this horseshoe crab tagging. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So they have to get, yeah, go ahead, sir.
How does it work when you tag a horseshoe crab? What happens to it then? It kind of swims off, and how does that give you more information about what horseshoe crab populations are doing?
Yeah, let's back up a little bit. So in order to become a citizen science for this program, you have to be trained, because this is not one of the typical programs that you just go and look and report. You actually are handling live animals, in this case, horseshoe crab, and you actually placing a tag in the horseshoe crab. So you need to be thoroughly trained, have good training, which we provide, and then we partner you up with more experienced volunteers until you feel comfortable doing this, because you're going to be looking for horseshoe crab at specific sites that we have established. This monitoring site where you tag horseshoe crab, and then you're going to tag, and you're going to take measurements, take data that is going to be utilized under this big umbrella scientific study. So you are actually collecting data that's going to be used. So it needs to be standardized and it needs to be done properly. So we tag the horseshoe crabs to understand movement. Basically, over time, if with these tagging programs, which is called a mark and recapture program, you basically can do establish trends in the population. You can start seeing if they're declining, increasing, or stable, and this is through the tags. So you put a tag in an animal with the hope that you will get the tag back, either by somebody reporting that animal seen live, or if the animal perish, at least you get the tag. So that's the way. That's what we tag it, basically.
Do you see a lot of movement among different Florida estuaries when you tag a horseshoe crab? Does it kind of stay within the Sarasota County area, or do they move?
Well, in this county, we started this program in 2000. Well, we started in 2018, but we couldn't do much because of the red tide. And so really, we've been tagging animals here for the past year and this year. So we haven't gotten any data yet in terms of a lot of movement. This take a little bit of time. However, in Cedar Key, which this program has been running for a few years now, and actually that's the first place that FWC and Florida Sea Grant started launching this program. They've seen some crabs actually moving, I believe 100 miles north. And that's very rare. That's not usual for what we know. They normally stay in the vicinity. So they're pretty loyal to their site, put it that way. And in biology, you call that site fidelity. But that's some of the things that we're trying to understand. So we haven't gotten much reports from our crabs that we tag here. But we're hoping that, we increase the tags. We increase the number of volunteers looking for them, and the public. You don't really have to be a volunteer for the program, and you still can help this program. And I can talk to you more about it right now, or we can wait.
Yeah, go ahead. We're on a roll.
All right, great. So we do have citizen scientists that they actually do the work, but these tags are put, and then we're hoping that the general public actually sees them and report them. And I believe if you can show the picture, I don't know if you're going to be able to, you will see the tag, but it's basically a disc that goes into the animal with a phone number that you can call to, and a number that represents the ID for that tag. So we're hoping that the general public start reporting these tags, because our volunteers cannot be there all the time. So anybody can play a role. And even if it's a tag, even if you see a horseshoe crab that is alive and it's not tagged, we still want to know about it. And you can provide information to FWC or to us by telling us the location where you see it. And there's an app that you can actually download in your phone to do this kind of reporting, because we want to understand where these crabs are as well.
Cool. Yeah, maybe we can provide a link to that app later after the broadcast is done so that people can find it. So where could you expect to find horseshoe crabs around Sarasota Bay, for example? Where's the most likely spot?
Well, horseshoe crabs, in order to, the reason we monitor horseshoe crabs, I should say, when we monitor horseshoe crabs, we do it when they're actually spawning, when they come into, normally in pairs, to lay their eggs in the sun by the female and being fertilized externally by the males. So they like a sandy beach that they can go and lay their eggs. This is talking about Sarasota Bay. Normally, you don't see them in the Gulf side. In Florida and the East Coast, you can see them in other states as well. But here in Florida, mainly in bays, so in the estuary. So some of the sites that, so in the south part of the bay, there's some reports of them, like Lemon Bay, that area. We see them in the north side of the bay as well, like by New College area, all that area. However, the whole bay most likely had a good number of horseshoe crabs, but because we hardened so much of those shorelines, horseshoe crabs have been displaced. So that's something that we have this program as well, because we want to, there might be sites that we don't know of them, that there are a lot of horseshoe crabs. So we want everybody to keep reporting live animals so we can, add more monitoring sites to our survey and determine if it might be a better site than the ones we actually survey in terms of numbers of horseshoe crabs. But they like open areas, so they can crawl the beach and deposit their eggs on the sand.
Interesting. So you said that seawalls, the ways that we use to harden our shorelines actually could be a problem for horseshoe crabs. That's really interesting to know. What other kind of environmental impacts do those seawalls have?
Well, seawalls can be very have a lot of negative impact not only to horseshoe crabs but a lot of creatures that actually need to try to move from the water edge into the land, the coastline, because they don't have that now they have a barrier, they cannot. So that's a big problem in general for animals. Also birds that normally prey along the shoreline, a lot of shorebirds, now they have this big gradient high step that they cannot access the water, so they there's a lot of impacts to wildlife. But if you want to go deeper into some of the negative impacts of seawalls, can be nutrients. You remove plants that normally will suck up a lot of the nutrients. It will slow down, the nutrients will go into the bay. So you can have water quality issues with seawalls, erosion as well. Seawalls tend to erode more than actually. It's actually built to protect your shoreline from erosion. In some cases, can even make it worse, because now you create a different movement of the water and displacing that force along the seawall, so affecting your seawall and affecting the neighbors, and what creates a domino effect. So there's many different negative effects of seawalls, but it's basically you're removing what it was a natural habitat or more natural, and now you're creating this gray area.
Yeah, so you're kind of you're making a barrier between land and sea that animals need to be able to traverse, right?
Yes.
So correct. Yeah, so studying horseshoe crabs can teach us more about, where are the areas of our bay, maybe where we do have that good transition between upland and the estuary for animals to be able to move. But I'm wondering if there are other things we can learn about Florida's estuaries by studying horseshoe crabs.
Definitely. Horseshoe crabs, since they're like tiny little creatures, or actually when they're eggs or embryos, they're food source for many different animals. In fact, a lot of migratory birds have come to some of our beaches just to eat on the eggs of the horseshoe crabs. And actually, the red-knot threaten, they actually time their migration from Patagonia all the way to Delaware Bay, which they have a massive spawning event of horseshoe crab. They time their migration all the way from the south to the Arctic Circle to make sure that they hit the spot when the horseshoe crabs are there, because it's a main source of protein for them. So it is. So even has an embryo, has eggs or embryo, and then through the juvenile stages and the adult, they feed. A lot of animals feed on horseshoe crabs. We have records, pictures showing sea turtles eating horseshoe crabs, raccoons eating horseshoe crabs, fish eating horseshoe crabs. As I said, a lot of birds eating not only the eggs but the actual animals. So they actually food source for many different animals that we care for. So if we actually deplete horseshoe crab, we're gonna affect the whole ecosystem by removing one important source of food. So yeah, and they're predators as well. In nature, either you get eaten or you eat something. So they also help to eat some of the other organisms that need some stay in shape. And
yeah, so they're in a super important part of the estuarine food web that I think we don't always think about. And I've read some reports that around the United States anyway, that a lot of populations are in decline. And I think you told me earlier that we don't really have a lot of data on what Florida's horseshoe crab populations are like. But I'm wondering if you can tell us what some of the causes of the declines around the rest of the U.S. are.
Yeah, so we have a lot of populations of horseshoe crab, even though the same species, they're different populations. So you have some Delaware and New York, and then you have some through the Carolinas. But our each population is doing differently in regards, and some of the threats are some different than others. A lot of threats to horseshoe crab in fisheries, people fishing for them to use as baits, or the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, since we use the blood of horseshoe crabs to test for contaminants into implants or vaccines, things like that. That's the main source of use, actually, horseshoe crabs. So they're being managed differently and utilized differently. So, for example, in Delaware Bay, that population of horseshoe crabs actually is increasing now. It seems to be increasing because the good management practices, that was declining heavily, and they put a lot of effort and tried to bring it back to protect it somehow. Here in Florida, there's not a big industry in terms of horseshoe crabs. There's no pharmaceutical industry collecting horseshoe crabs to get their blood. There's small fisheries, but it's not as intensive as in other states. It seems to be the aquarium trade is maybe one of the main consumers of horseshoe crabs. But anyhow, so we don't know much about in Florida, and that's the reason we're trying to. Well, this is what this program is doing. All we'll do is to let us know how the population in Florida is doing. So each population is doing a little bit different, and I don't know if I can share my. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Sure.
So bear with me for a second, and I'll try to show you all the populations how they're doing.
Oh, that would be great to see.
Yeah. So just 1 second. We'll try to do that right now and see.
Okay. Armando, if you feel like you can answer a question while you're trying to do that, multitasking. Yeah. We've got one question.
Okay.
From the audience. You want to go ahead and put it on screen.
Can you see my screen?
Actually, I can. Add to stream. Wow, how about that? Okay.
Yeah. So before I answer the question, if I can tell you then. So these are the main regions for population status or population of horseshoe crabs: New England, New York, Delaware Bay, Southeast, and Florida. As you can see, there's evidence of significant declines in New England, New York, but we don't have in the East Coast or the West Coast of Florida. So we don't know much about them. And that's, again, why this program is really important, not only for the state, but also for the country itself.
Absolutely. And that's such an important reason for citizen science too, right? Exactly. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, which is that a lot of citizen science is about contributing to these kinds of data gaps that we have, where for different reasons, the monitoring isn't happening, but it's really important information that we need to have, and citizens can help us collect it.
Yeah, and if I can brag about my program, because it's a program that I run. I love volunteers. I work with a lot of volunteers in many different capacities, but this program is so unique because you get to be the marine biologist maybe you always wanted to be. You actually grabbing an animal carefully, obviously, that's what you get trained. But you actually tagging one of the creatures that you're monitoring. That's not very common in a lot of citizen science. So you actually are doing a lot of hard science. And I think it's pretty exciting for people that, maybe always wanted to do this, or, after years of doing something else, they decided they want to help. You get really deep. So you're talking about diving deep. You really you dive deep into the citizen science program with this program.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and take our audience question here. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but Molly wants to know what part of the shoreline the crabs use, if they use the sand or intertidal beaches.
Yeah. Well, the horseshoe crabs are on the bay always. They're benthic creatures, so benthic means they're at the bottom. So they are, shallow waters, a little deep water, depending on what they're doing, obviously. But when they come to lay their eggs, they do need that intertidal zone. So they are normally between the mid part of the beach, because if they're too close to the water, survival of the eggs might not be as high. If they're too high in the sand, mortality might increase. So they're kind of in the middle. So they do need that intertidal part of the beaches. And normally when this occurs is in the new moon and full moons. That's because the water is a little higher, so they can access that part of the beach that is essential for the survival of the eggs.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. We've got one more question here. Let's hide this one. Christine wants to know, how long do horseshoe crabs generally live?
Again, this is something we're always trying to find more information, but right now it's estimated around 15 to 20 years a horseshoe crab can live. And something really cool about horseshoe crab, if you want to know some cool fact, I love cool facts. They are actually an invertebrate, so they do have a backbone like we do. They have an exoskeleton, but they molt like a lobster, like a crab, even though they're not as related to actually crabs or lobsters or shrimp. They're actually more related to spiders and scorpions. In order to grow, they do have to mold a shell. But once they get to sexual maturity, so once they start reproducing, they start molting. So that's what we can tag them. And they reach sexual maturity around 7, 8, 9 years old. So that's pretty fascinating for somebody, if you like arthropods, if you know that like spider will always grow, a lobster will always keep growing and molting. Well, horseshoe crabs stop to put all their effort and energy into reproducing, so which is fascinating.
Interesting, and that's why we need those intertidal areas for them.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, Armando, is there any other? Do you want to share anything else on your screen, or share any last cool fact about horseshoe crabs?
Yeah,
we let you go?
let me try to see if I can put one more screen about how can you participate and get involved.
Perfect.
So what I'm looking for that slide, I'm gonna tell you that we do this training, so keep an eye on upcoming trainings. Fall, we already passed, or we're passing our spring monitoring, but we're gonna do this in fall. So before the fall, we're gonna have another training, and this is super cool that you can do it, and you can come train, and you decide not want to do it, then it's okay as well. But it has a individual. If you go out on the beach, if you see horseshoe crabs, please report them. I'm gonna send you the app later so you can see it, so people can have it. I don't know if you have access to the people that participate in here. I'm gonna share one time my screen, but it will be good to have pass on that app. Just 1 second. Okay, can you see my screen?
I can. Yep.
All right. So I just want to let you know that if you decided to become a volunteer, this is some of the stuff that you will see, or you get really cool field stories. You get to interact with a lot of people, not only to answer a lot of questions. A lot of people really they've seen horseshoe crab, but they have hardly any information about them. And I think they're some of the most fascinating creatures in our bay. And you can see a lot of large spiny events. Hopefully, even the trilobites hatch, which are the little tiny, little bitty horseshoe crabs. And you make really good friends. And even these volunteers, they find a message in a bottle. So you can get to do a lot of cool stuff. And I invite you to participate. If you have further questions, please reach out to me. I'm accessible. I'm at the extension office in Twin Lakes. Well, not at the moment, but you can always reach me by email. You can call me, and I'm happy to answer a lot of questions about this or any other subject. But thank you for participating in this interview.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and pop your email address on this post afterwards so that people have that and they can contact you. I think we're all looking forward to getting back on the bay when it's safe to do so. Yes. And I want to start asking all of our interviewees this question. Armando, do you have a favorite spot on Sarasota Bay that you love to go to and you can't wait to get back to?
Yes. And
is it like
I kind of want to answer that. Yes, don't tell anyone, okay? Well, I have several. I have multiples. I love the bay. I love being on the water, underwater, nearby it. So I love our bay. But the south part of the bay, like Lemon Bay area, I love that side. There's very healthy mangroves around that area. I love that. I also like after crossing Little into Lombo, I forgot the name of the park. It's just off the...
Good point.
Yeah.
Quick point.
That's right. I love that area.
Me too.
I love that area. I love taking my kids there. It's really good fishing. You see a lot of wildlife. I love bird watching there as well. So that's a great spot from the bridge to, all the way around the bay, the mangroves. You can see a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, so those are two. But I love the water. I love our bay. And I think every place you go, you can find there's something to discover, something to do, and something to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Armando, I'm totally on Team Horseshoe Crab now. Thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about these super interesting invertebrates. With that, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. So,
all right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Armando. Yeah, welcome. Bye-bye.
And for the rest of the audience, thank you so much for joining us for our first ever Sarasota Bay Deep Dive. And thank you for, bearing with us through a couple of technical difficulties. I think we're going to get better and better as things go along. We have other deep dives interviews that are scheduled on Tuesdays and Thursdays through the end of April, and we're working on scheduling in May now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my stream and put up that schedule of interviews that we have going through April. You can also find the Facebook event on our Facebook page, which is just, if you search Sarasota Bay on Facebook, you'll find us. So thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you for the next deep dive.